So let's start with this. A lot of people have a definition of iteration in their head, and I want you to reframe this for everyone. What is your personal definition?
Right. So I think probably the best way to explain it is through like basically a short example. But iteration as a word is one of those things that has fallen into the category of popularized words that have lost its meaning, right? And so let me tell a little story as to what I think iteration actually is. So if you ask the average group of people, or just ask the average business person, if you were to iteratively write a book, how would you do it? And I've done this bunches of times, and most people will answer the question. They'll say, well, I'd start by writing chapter 1, or they'd say, like, I'd write an outline of the book, or I'd put together like the table of contents, right? That's usually when people think about iteration, they think about like taking that first small step. The way that I think about iteratively writing a book, the last thing that you would actually do is write a book. Where you'd probably start is just by getting together with for lunch with a couple people and sharing with them like what you think the riskiest assumption in the book is, right? What do you think the real hook is, the thing that'll get people's attention, right? And you might end up having to have lunch with 5 or 6 different groups of people before you like really hone that in. When you get that, like go from having a 15-minute lunch to maybe doing like an hour-long talk on your team and see if you can hone that in. And you keep progressing with that idea where when you go from, lunch with friends to doing a little talk to maybe writing a blog entry to, doing a talk maybe outside your company or doing like a one-day workshop, every time you're kind of making it longer and more sophisticated, you keep on adding more and more ideas a little bit. But the idea is that the last thing that you actually do is pen a book. It's not about going off into the forest in a cabin and trying to pump out 17 chapters in a week, right? That's not being iterative. So the idea behind iteration is like, how can you create value to the marketplace as fast as humanly possible?
Yeah, so it's about generating value early on versus waiting until it's ready, until it's perfect. And a lot of business owners, a lot of leaders can get stuck in that quagmire of, well, it's not quite right. I don't want the customers to see this yet. It's not what I wanted it to be. It's how do you push past that and launch the V1, or we call it, we have a skateboard versus car metaphor that we use a lot of time here at Ramsey. How do you push through that and go, okay, I need to launch this. It's good enough for now.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, and we say this a lot around here at Ramsey, which is perfection is the lowest possible standard. And that's usually the standard that most people play to. In their minds, those of us who make things, for me, I make software products. I make apps. That's the thing I'm passionate about. But it doesn't matter if, you make homes or you install water heaters or, do electrical work. It doesn't matter. All of us who do things or make things for a living, kind of have that perfect picture in their head. Like, ideally, if I did my job the best, what would I want it to look like? And, the hard reality is anytime you're solving a complex problem, the likelihood that in your brain you can come up with the right plan of what the exact execution of that complex problem is and to do it perfectly the first time you swing the bat is actually really, really low. So, if perfection is the lowest standard, then what mindset do you need to shift into? And for me, it's real simple, which is just like find the thing that is valuable in the marketplace and meaningful to people, and actually just kind of test it out.
So, give me an example of something that we've done this for, a product here at Ramsey that you can think of.
Right. Actually, the first example is probably one that people would be really familiar with, which is the first real big digital product that we did called EveryDollar, which is a piece of budgeting software. And we when we approached that problem, there's actually kind of a funny story to it. It involves Dave. And, as the story is told, Dave came into the room where all the people were, building the first version, the early version of EveryDollar. And he got excited and said, I just talked with somebody on the phone and they said they think that we could have 50 million people using EveryDollar in the first year, right?
Wow.
And Dave said that for the purpose of like exciting everybody and motivating everybody. But what it actually did is it kind of like struck fear in everybody. Like, oh my gosh, if 50 million people are going to use this, it's got to be unbelievably world-class, the first thing that we ever put out there. And the reality of what actually happened is everybody got so fixated on the need to make it perfect, it actually really slowed down the development of that product. So, we had to self-correct, as you got to do in business a lot of times. And, we took another look at the problem and just said, hey, instead of trying to build the perfect thing, let's just build the simplest thing. Let's just build a simple budget that people can use. And we eventually added more onto it. But the more conventional example, the one that just happened recently, is actually inside EntreLeadership, our digital product that we have for EntreLeadership. And one of the things that we talk about a lot as an organization is a desired future dashboard. The importance of making a goal for your team and getting everybody around it and making sure everybody's on the same page in terms of executing. And so a digital desired future dashboard is something that we wanted to bring into our EntreLeadership product. And, we actually have like a whole group inside Ramsey here that talks about how we do desired future dashboards and helps hold our business units accountable. And there's a lot of sophistication about how we do DFDs internally. But what the thing that the Entre team had to be really careful of is not like front load all of that insight and all of that into the digital product. Because really what we needed to do first is just build something in a week, put it out there, and see if people even want to use it, right? And that's kind of the heart of iteration. I think it was one of the founders at LinkedIn that said, like, if you're proud or if you're not embarrassed of the first version of the product you put out there, you probably spent too much time on it.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. It can be overwhelming to the consumer to try to get it perfect. And instead, we just said, hey, let's just do a rudimentary version. Let's get it in front of real people, see what they think, and then make changes based on that. And that's something that very recent that just happened. And with EveryDollar, I remember when it was CD-ROM software.
Right.
And you may be thinking, George, you're not old enough. This is before EveryDollar.
You're
that was the best thing we had.
George.
Yes.
That's what it is.
And so we've made iterations, and no one wants to be the next Blockbuster where you go, well, we're just CD-ROM kind of people, and if they don't want to use it, then forget them.
Right.
We've decided, we need to iterate on this budgeting software. We need to take it into the modern century and go, this needs to be an app. And then we took that app and said, how do we make this app better? So how do you know when it's time to iterate as the leader in the business? Yeah,
so I actually don't think that there are a lot of situations where you wouldn't want to iterate. So one of the things we're really guilty of just as human beings is comprehensive thinking. Like we want to sort it all out in our head. But there are things that, like, I think it was the Donald Rumsfeld famous thing from the early 2000s, which is you have the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns, right? Well, in anything that you're doing, for the most part, particularly if it's new. So particularly when you're going into new territory as a business, iteration is most important. But when you're pursuing something new, the known territory, you always have some known knowns and you always have some unknown unknowns. And if what you wait to do is to start until you've solved for the unknown unknowns, you missed the bus. So in any situation, like the kind of self-quiz I do for myself is, am I waiting to do what I know can be done until I've driven out all the uncertainty or all the risk? Like my goal as an entrepreneur or a business owner is not to eliminate all risk. That's what bureaucrats do, right? My job is to take capital, take a risk in the marketplace and see what happens. Now it's got to be a responsible risk, right? But iteration is a really great way to do that because instead of front loading an enormous amount of cash out in the marketplace to go do a big thing, just start simple. Start with the known, right? Take that, for the example, desired future dashboard. At our live events, and maybe you were a part of this, maybe the listener was part of this, didn't know you were actually part of it. But one of the things that we've done at our live events is instead of building software around a desired future dashboard, we had the bright idea of just from stage doing a pitch or doing a talk about what a desired future dashboard was. And at the end of the talk, just said, hey, we've got, a PowerPoint, template for a desired future dashboard. Who's interested? Like 3/4 of the hands in the room went up, right? I didn't have to write any software. I didn't have to spend a lot of money to go do that. We used the live event that we were already doing, that we already had. We delivered value to the customer by talking to them about a desired future dashboard, teaching them about a desired future dashboard. But then from there, validated with them that they would actually be interested in using it. So we got that early validation that cost us next to nothing. And then at that point, that's when you decide to go get, a whole software development team that's actually really expensive to run and operate, to go focus on that idea and go build it. And even when we go build it, we're still building the simplest possible version of it, and getting it out there and seeing what people like.